Thanks for taking the time out to talk to us today. I really appreciate that.
Of course, man. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too. It's nice to actually get to see your face and talk to you because I feel like we've talked a lot on the internet over chat. So it's
Right.
it's nice to see lips moving.
It's nice to put like a profile picture with an actually moving image.
Exactly. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Cool.
I always like to start off things by asking, what is your first musical memory?
Oh God.
I know you have a lot of them.
Yeah, the one that first pops up. So my dad is a musician, and my dad's a reggae musician. So I've got the Jamaica flag behind me. Got the Lee Scratch Perry photo right there. You know, very influenced by that stuff. But one of my first like musical memories, I remember it's kind of the first concert, maybe the first concert not the first concert I went to, but the first concert that I think I really wanted to go to. It was Shaggy and Maxi Priest. And Shabba Ranks was supposed to be there, but was having visa issues, so he never showed up. But it was like 1996, I think, when Shaggy and Maxi Priest did a cover of That Girl.
Nice.
Yeah. So my dad always was telling this story, but we were at this venue in Massachusetts, in down like in the Cape Cod area, called the Melody Tent, and my dad told me that I was like, you know, kept like sneaking away. I was like 6 or 7 years old. I kept like sneaking further and further away from him. There was like some 12 or like 13-year-old girls that I kind of like gravitated towards and like, pretended I didn't know my dad. That's one of the earliest memories of myself that I have.
You grew up in a super musical family. So I feel like not only did that have like a huge influence on you, but I feel like you maybe started it like a little bit further down the line than most people do. How do you feel like you kind of got a leg up in the industry by growing up with music surrounding you so much?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that like in any sort of sense, it was definitely like a little bit of the industry know-how. And that sort of thing. So another one of my earlier music memories, I must have been like 12 years old. And my dad was on tour. I don't know exactly where, but I remember he called me and he's like, hey, like, I need you to fax this thing over to our agent. Fax, this is like, what, 2000 or something?
Right.
So he's like, I need you to fax this document over to our agent. And this is actually a really cool story. I mean, we could talk about this later too, but it kind of connects something that happened much later in my life where the agent was this guy named Val Wolf, who at the time was with the agency group. And he was my dad's agent. He's one of the biggest reggae agents in music business.
Yeah.
But he was Lee Scratch Perry's agent. And so I worked with Lee a couple times. The first time was in 2012.
Wow.
But so it was really funny because like when I reached out to Val to kind of put everything in motion with that project, it was kind of like, hey man, I haven't talked to you in like 10 years. But yeah, it was really funny. So I think it was like a lot of that kind of stuff. I knew how to talk to people. I knew, you know, my dad, so he's the keyboard player of the Scatolites, but he's also served as the manager for a while. And, you know, and so, yeah, so I really, you know, I kind of saw him. He was the one who was working with his agent and, you know, routing tours and just, you know, setting up shows. So I think that was my biggest advantage. And, you know, I played in bands before I was a DJ. Right. And it was just really always easy for me to reach out to people and ask for an opportunity. You know, I think that's like one of the biggest things that I see with people is like they sit back and wait for things to come to them.
Yeah.
But I've just always been like a go-getter in that sort of sense. And I've never really been like intimidated to talk to people.
Well, I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't shoot, man. And I've always found that it never hurts to reach out. And a lot of the time people are ready and willing to help you if they can.
100%, dude, 100%. And I think like a lot of people, you know, especially now, like in the COVID era and stuff, you know, we're all sitting around and like, we want interaction. We want to talk to people, and it's like
Yeah.
what's so great about what's been going on. You know, you see so much more knowledge being shared and so much more information out there. And it's great, and I hope it keeps happening.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So I know you have like this huge background in reggae, but
Yeah.
how'd you fall in love with dance music?
That's a good question too. Really, it was when I went to college.
Hmm.
It was kind of like two different things happening at once. There's really three different things kind of happening at once. But so, I learned to DJ just to use the equipment,
Right.
turntables and stuff, because when I was like 18, I used to, need to sneak into the bars and clubs in Boston that my friends were hanging out with, hanging out at, because a lot of the friends that I was hanging out with were my sister's friends. My sister's like 3.5 years older than me.
Yeah.
So I was like 18 years old, and Tuesday nights in the summer we used to go to this place in Alston called, I'm from Boston,
Yeah.
and we in Alston Brighton, called the Draft, and it's still there. And my friend would spin 45s usually on Tuesday nights. And so they would sneak me in by giving me his turntables or his records, and I would have to carry him in. I would kind of just like sit there and watch him, and I ended up just like not hanging out with anyone, and would watch him how to use the turntables.
Yeah.
And then I would go to Guitar Center and spend like hours at Guitar Center and mess around with the equipment and stuff. And so at the same, this is kind of like as I'm moving out of Boston and going to college,
Yeah.
I had a PA system. So because I was playing in bands, and I was trying to do that when I first got to college. I went to Syracuse, and, I was trying to do band stuff, but I just noticed, I would be playing music a lot, and people liked that I had this big sound system.
Yeah.
So I started bringing it literally just outside of my dorm and playing music on the quad for people. And I was at this time I was into band. I was getting into bands like MGMT, Flaming Lips,
Yeah.
Passion Pit.
So dancey dance rock kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly that, like indie dance, sort of new disco type stuff.
Yeah.
And my sister, I've always been influenced by my sister's taste. She was into the little more like industrial side of things. Like she really liked Korn. I know they're not dance, but like Marilyn Manson, and then Prodigy and Chemical Brothers. And I knew about Daft Punk like growing up from her. But it wasn't until when Justice put out Genesis,
Yeah.
or sorry, Cross.
Cross.
Cross, sorry, that I was like, whoa, like what is this? And really, I think so like that, I was super influenced by that. And then I was like, oh, this DJ thing's cool. I started to find more electronic music. But one of my good friends at Syracuse was a fashion designer, and he was doing a fashion show like his freshman or sophomore year, and asked me to craft the music for it. And it was super heavily influenced by Justice, but also like asked me to do a cover of Lady Gaga, and that was like the moment where I was like, yo, like this is like I can make this music. Like,
Yeah.
I was DJing it for fun at parties and stuff.
Right.
But it really wasn't until that fashion show that I was like, okay, this is something like that I can do. And then I started playing at more like clubs in Syracuse, and really trying to market myself as a DJ, and separated myself from the bands that I was playing in.
That's such a cool story. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that like Bloghouse was like an entry point for you, because I feel like that kind of short period before EDM became a thing was like really important to dance music. Because it, at least in the United States, it really gave a lot of people that were on the other side of the fence from dance music like a way to get into it, because it like confused like hip hop and rock and all of these things together under on top of a dance beat. So it's just like, it's always been interesting to me to hear people's stories about like getting in that era, because it was so pivotal to like the US dance music scene.
100%. I like hip hop had the golden era of hip hop in the 90s. I think that was like, that 2007 to like 2012, maybe 13, like kind of the era was really like our golden era of dance music. Like some of the best stuff was coming out then. And like, as you said, there was just so many different kind of things converging together, like Steve Aoki, obviously we kind of consider him a little bit more EDM now, but what he was doing with like the Bloody Beetroots and Block Party and that kind of stuff was like so cool. And I mean, and I was so heavily influenced by Diplo too, like the stuff that he was doing with like the Hollertronics mixtapes and stuff. And like I would go down to Philly a lot and go to like the Mad Decent Block parties when they were doing those. Yeah, and it was just a lot of really, and obviously like I really loved MIA because that kind of touched a little bit more on the sort of like
your roots,
like the world music that I was into and stuff, like it was just a lot of great things coming together at the right time.
So much rule breaking too. I feel like, like these days, like things are real formulaic, and that's cool. Like, everybody like knows exactly what to expect. But back then there was a lot of rule breaking. It reminds me of like the early days of dance music too. Like that's what people were doing when they first created house music and techno and all these other genres. They were just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just gonna throw some shit at the wall and see if it works. And that's how we got here today. But anyways, I digress.
100%. I totally agree with you.
So like having said that, like you have like this world influence. How do you feel like that creeps its way into your music? Because your music's real diverse too. I mean, like you could call yourself a house producer, but even in that lane, and I say this with the utmost respect, you're like all over the place.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, I like that. That's great. But I like how is that like leached into like the way that you produce?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think what it really is just being like authentic and that's so I forget when it was exactly, but a couple of years ago, I want to say probably about like 7 or 8 years ago. What year is it? 2012. Yeah, almost 10 years ago. Wow. I was doing a project called Chemicals of Creation, and we were doing a lot more like electro, really trying to be like Diplo. And like Mad Decent was our goal. Like we wanted to get on Mad Decent. And then when trap became popular, we were doing trap. And when Moonbatone was popular, we were doing Moonbatone. And it was really like Moonbatone was the thing that spoke the most to me, and it was also what we had the most success with. But then once like EDM became a thing, like electro house, I don't even want to call it electro house, like big room, like that sort of stuff. Once that became really popular, that's when and even like the festival trap stuff, when it became like really noisy, really hype, I started to be like, I don't know about this. And it was actually around this time too that I started working with Felix da Housecat. And Felix really influenced me to just like be myself and be original. But I had this epiphany when I was trying to make some music in New York, and I was like, there's a big difference between like the music I want to make and the music I'm supposed to make. Because like I do have this unique, everyone does, but I obviously see myself as having this unique story, unique influences. It's like, okay, well, no one can tell my story, so why am I not trying to do that? And that's, really why I think my music is as diverse as it is, even though, you're right. Like I definitely consider myself a house DJ. But, I'm also like like the music I make, I think is also like kind of pop influence too, because like I listen to the radio a lot as a kid. I grew up with MTV and that sort of stuff. I was like, definitely a hip hop kid, and I would like pop punk and that sort of stuff. And I used to play in those kind of bands. So, yeah, man, it's just, I don't try to limit myself. I don't sit down. Sometimes I will sit down. I'll have a reference and be like, I want to make a record like this.
Right.
But it's still, putting your voice to it, because at the end of the day, we're storytellers.
Yeah.
And, you want to tell your story. I don't want to tell someone else's story. So that's, I think, why I'm all over the place.
I love that though. I love that like your authenticity is just as important as like your output. Like, as like, that says a lot about you as an artist.
Thank you.
You mentioned Felix. And you have an album where there were 8 of the 11 songs where you got song credits for. How did you end up like hooking up with him and like becoming such a pivotal part of that album?
So this is a great story. When I first graduated from college, I got a job working at Dubspot in New York.
Yeah.
Which was a music production and DJ school geared towards electronic music.
Right.
And at that time, my DJ project, Chemicals of Creation, we were using, everyone at the time was either using Serato or turntables. Serato or Tractor rather.
Right.
Sorry, with turntables. And, CDJs, it was still in the era of like the CDJ 1000. They really weren't that great.
Right.
They were great. They were fine, whatever. But obviously you could just keep so much, more on the computer. So I learned Tractor when I first started using a computer. And my partner was a Serato DJ. So we went back and forth using both.
Yeah.
And then when I get to New York, I realized I'm one of 6 people like in the entire city that even knows what Tractor is. Tractor was not popular at this time. Native Instruments was not a big company. Their biggest thing was like Machina at the time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And so this is like 2011. Like really, well, yeah. So 2012 is when I met Felix. I met Felix October of 2012.
Right.
And so I was teaching DJ classes, and I was teaching the Tractor part of these DJ classes. And one of these guys that I was teaching with, his name is Mike Henderson. He goes by Endo.
I know Endo.
Yeah. So everyone knows Endo. He's really, really smart guy and really pro expert, one of the top experts probably in the world when it comes to Tractor.
Yeah.
And he was doing a lot of artist trainings because people started switching over from Serato to Tractor because we came out like the X1 at that time, and you could scroll through stuff and hit your cue points.
Right.
And it was synced, obviously. It was like the biggest kind of thing. And so Endo did a training with Felix. Felix was like, okay, I want to do this. He actually saw Luciano playing in Ibiza, and Luciano's like drinking champagne. He's got 4 decks going. He's talking to this model over here. He's like, man, how you got 4 decks going and you're sipping champagne and talking to this model? And he's like, Tractor, man. But so I'm very long-winded.
It's all good, man. I love this. I love to hear the stories.
Felix was like, hey, Endo, like, do you want to go on tour with me and be my, my Tractor tech? And Endo was working with, like Sasha and Digweed, Carl Cox, Pete Tong, Nicole Madaber. And he was like, hey, I'm a little too busy, but I know this kid, Devon, that could probably help you out. And so Felix had a show it was at like the Hilton or something it was around Halloween.
Yeah.
And it was this Halloween show. And so, I get linked up with Felix's management, and, I'm talking to Felix over the computer and stuff. But so Felix calls me like that day or something, that he's supposed to play. And he's like, what's up, Devon Dazzle? What's up, Dazzler? So for, as I'm sure Felix has an album called Devon Dazzle and the Neon Fever.
Yeah.
So I think basically, Felix thinks I'm like Devon Dazzle incarnate that was like delivered to his doorstep at his hotel, So I think I just had an advantage, honestly. Like Felix came, like took a liking to me very quickly.
Yeah.
But also at that gig, it was really funny because like he put me to he tested me hardcore. Like there was a DJ playing before. There's like 15 girls in the booth, and he's like, "Go get everyone out of the booth right now." And I'm like, "Okay." Like the DJ's still playing, like there's about 5 or 10 minutes, and I was like, "Hey guys, like I need you guys to all clear out. I'm gonna start setting up the next DJ." Luckily, everyone except for one person did it. But so I start setting up Felix's DJ stuff. And then I go to like this other person, to the one woman who's still stuck around. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry, but like, I really need you to get out of here. The DJ doesn't want anyone in the booth before he plays, and he's about to like come in here. And the DJ that's playing like grabs me by the neck. He's like, this is my wife. you don't tell her what to do, blah blah blah. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry, like I'm a 22-year-old kid, and this like legendary producer is telling me what to do. I'm gonna listen.
You got to listen.
Exactly. So that was all cool. Got everyone out of the booth, starts playing. And you know, it's this big like hotel, bottles and models type gig.
Yeah.
And there's all these lights, and Felix calls them swirly whirlies. You know, all the robot lights and stuff. And he's like, man, you tell that light man to make it dark in here. He's like, you tell him I like it black and strobes. And so I'm like, I see the light guy, but it's literally like a balcony separating us, and there's no door or anything. So I crawl over the balcony.
Shit.
And I'm like, cut the lights. and so, you know, Felix sees all this. And the biggest thing too is that, so before the gig, the reason why Felix called me is because he wanted me to make sure I got the right mezcal for him. He drinks like he was drinking a very specific brand. It was Del Maguey Minero mezcal, and I had to go to like 7 different liquor stores to find it. And he's like, man, you found it. That was like the first thing I did right. And then it kind of just fell in line after that. And then you know, after this gig, he's like, hey man, like, do you want to do next weekend with me in Miami? And then they were like, hey, do you want to do next weekend with me in India? And then it was like, hey, like, do you make music? You know, we start hanging out.
Yeah.
He's like, do you make music? Like, you know how to use Ableton? And he's like, I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, like, I'm gonna start. He's like, I want you to come to my house, like, come hang out, show me more tractor stuff, like, you know, do this and that. And I was like, all right, dude, like, I got you. And then, you know, I just started going out. I was like his regular guy, and we started going out. And it was really funny because the way the album came about was we did this last minute party in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was a grad party for someone, like this person's girlfriend. And we get to the gig, and they like it was right around the time that the DJM 900 came out.
Yeah. And
you can plug right into that to use tractors, so you don't need a sound card. So you know, a lot of clubs didn't have it yet. And this little small group of people went out and bought Felix a mixer and then gave it to him.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was like, so when I tell you there was like 9 people at the party, I'm not exaggerating to you. There was 9 people, I'm pretty sure, in this, like, you know, it's still a small room. Maybe it fits like 200 or 300 people. But yeah, so we ended up like hanging out at these people's hotel afterwards, and we come to find out that they own a record label. And you know, the record label is based in Brooklyn, and they have, you know, all the money in the world to do whatever they want. And Felix starts talking about how he wants to do a new album and all this stuff. And you know, we ended up, I didn't stay as long in the hotel room as Felix did.
Yeah.
But but we ended up leaving. When we left that gig, basically Felix you know, had a new record deal almost. And he was, you know, building his team, and asked me to be involved with the team of people that was working on the album. So we moved in together in New York, which was actually this like 4-story amazing apartment in an old monastery on 16th Street. It was actually Ashley Simpson's old apartment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. And we spent a couple months there actually working on the record. It was me, this guy Maurice, this guy Travis. And that's where Lee Scratch Perry actually came into our basement and was like, you know, did vocals for 4 hours with us. And it was one of the most magical experiences of my life, probably. And we ended up working on that album for 2 more years. I went to Ibiza the 2 following summers with Felix, lived in Ibiza with him. And, you know, he was doing a residency at Space, but we would be in the studio all week. And it was really cool. It was really an awesome experience for me, because I was only like 24, you know, like 22 to 24 at the time.
Yeah.
Of us doing it. And yeah, we just, you know, it was a lot of people kind of came and went throughout the process, but I was Felix's like engineer. You know, I was his left hand, or right hand man rather. Yeah, it was just a really great experience.
That's you tell this story and it's like you followed in your father's footsteps, but in a different genre.
Yeah.
And like also now the song that you just made with Felix makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
100%. I'm like, oh, every reference in that song makes sense now.
Yeah. So the song, yeah, it's called Dazzler, and that's what he calls me. He'll call me, and all those the lyrics from that came from voice messages that he's left me on WhatsApp. Yeah, so it's like I was, I actually like was toying with the idea of creating an alias called Dazzler.
Yeah.
Because I have a bunch of new music that I'm putting out soon, and it is very different than stuff I put out before. But I was like, oh, do I want to do an alias? And I like found all these voice notes because I was switching phones, and I was like, God, these are so good. And yeah, it was like just around the time that I was going out to work with Ghetto Blaster and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was going out to stay with them for a couple of days and work on music. And because we already had a couple of tracks that we had done, but I was like, hey, I got these vocals, like I think we could do something with them. And then the rest is history.
That's so cool. I just loved hearing that whole story. That's so awesome. Like especially like just by chance meeting somebody who's so deeply entrenched with dance music, to be brought into it that way is like pretty remarkable.
Oh yeah, man, it was crazy. It was really crazy.
And I want to get one more story from you because it's just like another incredible moment, I feel like. But you did a back with Skream and Dennis Ferrer.
Oh God, yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, you were the opener for that show, but how do you end up going back to back with like two legends of dance music for 3 hours?
So this man, I feel like it happened so fast. I feel like okay, so Dennis and Skream decided to do an EP together called Local Heroes.
Yeah.
And they put it out, and then I don't know if they had the idea before or what, but they did a show in like Skream's hometown, and it was on Boiler Room actually, and they picked a guy that was like, the local hero of his hometown,
right.
who was like, who is the guy that kind of like needed that next step forward. And so they go to do a show in New York, and it must have been literally the day before the show happened. Dennis Ferrer went on Twitter and was like, "What's up, New York? Like, who should we pick to play with us? Like, who's the local hero?" And I like, my phone is blowing up. I didn't see that at the time. My phone's blowing up. I got tagged by like 30 different people, and he ended up DMing me and was like, "Hey man, what's up? Like, I want you to play with us at the show. It seems like people really support you in New York." I was like, "Cool, awesome." But even funny story is that like, so I forget what year this was, but it was either like the summer before the summer right before I met Dennis in Ibiza with Felix. And so I go to text him on my WhatsApp. We already had like a little bit of a conversation. I was like, "Hey man," I was like, "I guess we've already talked before, and yeah, they man, I don't remember if it was scheduled for me to like play with them or if they just ended up asking me to do it. But that was so crazy because like Skream had just, I think one of the reasons why I got to play for so long too is like Skream had just had some back problems. I know he had canceled some shows and stuff. Maybe it was right before after he had surgery.
Yeah.
I think he had like a slip disc or something. And yeah, man, it was crazy. He would lay on the DJ booth and like be like holding his hands up, like still mixing or like selecting tracks, but then would like go lay down or like go into the green room and he'd like take a break. And I was just there partying and stuff, and yeah, we played for 3 hours together, and it was just such a wild experience.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I actually went on to talk to Skream too. Actually, I mean, both of them I've been talking about, like putting music out on their labels. So it's like all those things kind of lead to another.
Such great stories, man. Such great stories. I love it.
Thank you.
I want to talk about Radioactive because I
Yeah.
know like one of the goals of Radioactive is kind of to find a balance between activism and music. And it's something that gets missed in dance music often because dance music is, I feel like, inherently activism by itself.
Mhm.
That's where it came from. But can you talk about like just kind of like the mission of Radioactive and like what you're doing there and like how do you strike that balance between like social responsibility and music?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started Radioactive in 2012, and it was really started as like a support group for our friends that were living and working together. And it was people of different like multidisciplinary backgrounds within art.
Mhm.
And so, we had some musicians and producers, we had some graphic designers, we had some filmmakers, and yeah, so we just like we wanted to put on people that no one really knew and thought were dope. And we everything we did, it was like, so it's kind of like covert activism. It's like we're not
Yeah.
in our face in people's faces constantly being like, donate to this, donate to that, do this, do that. It's just like, I think the biggest way to, you know kind of prove something or to do something is to just do it. So we would focus on artists that minority artists, or like just people that didn't have as much of a shot, or just people who weren't in the spotlight. We were trying
Right.
to find dope artists that just deserved a shot. But then one of the biggest things that we did was this thing called the Tunnel Project, where we went and interviewed different musicians that we saw in the subway stations. Because,
Oh wow.
everyone always sees these people, and some people who are musicians, I think, kind of pay them more mind. But a lot of people kind of just zoom past them, and they might enjoy it for a second while they're standing on the subway, like uh,
Platform. The
thank you.
platform. It's all good.
Yeah, the subway platform. But we started to talk to these people, and we just started to tell their stories. And we were doing these little, like, 3 to 5 minute videos that kind of just spotlighted them, spotlighted their stories and how they came to be, subway musicians. And that was really, really great. And yeah, I think since then, we kind of just, yeah, we're just trying to push diverse artists forward. We're trying to, use our voice in a positive way to bring light to certain things. Um, but like I said, just a little bit like in a sort of covert way. We're not trying to like be in people's face with like donate, raise money, do this. It's like, it's a lot about raising awareness, but also
Right.
just like putting these things that we talk about into action.
I love that. I love that. It's it sounds like your past in reggae, um, that's just another way that it seeps through is
Mm,
because I feel like that culture is very, very socially focused. Um,
yeah.
so it's nice to see that somebody is like thinking about these things in a way that's not like straight up in your face, but it's okay to be subtle with these things because people don't even realize that they're playing part in something that could be really important.
100%, 100%.
Um, and then I want to talk about your film degree, which is interesting to me that you have a degree in film. I mean, it's still creative,
Yeah.
but it's not music. How do you feel like your degree in film helps inform your music?
Cool. Okay. Well, so I should say that my degree within film is definitely still. So I was concentrated on like sound design and audio production within
Okay,
the film area. So I was
right,
doing a lot of sound mixing and stuff like that. But I think that, like, I am always, in terms of music stuff, it's like I'm always trying to add a visual element to my music and stuff too. So I'm always putting out videos, or like, just kind of things that are to accompany the music. But like I said earlier, it's like we're storytellers at the end of the
yeah,
day, musicians and filmmakers. So it's like, a lot of, actually, the music that I'm making right now, I'm working on an album, maybe, I don't know.
oh
I've been
wow,
saying this for
nice.
like a year. I have like a whole collection of music that I'm like, it's like a cohesive body of work. And I actually, like, I have this very visual sort of like concept for it. because I definitely am a more visual person. I think visually. I sort of like remember things visually.
Right.
And I think that's probably like where I'm most influenced by like the film stuff. But I mean, that's even funny too, because like I first went to school for acting.
Really?
I used to do acting and musical theater when I was a kid, and I'm not the best singer, but I did a lot of musical theater in school.
Yeah.
So when I went to college, I applied to acting, not musical theater, but acting, straight
Right.
acting. And I loved. Some of my best friends that I made were film majors, and I was acting in their films.
Oh wow.
And yeah, after my freshman year, I was like, because I was also playing in bands, and I mean, the acting thing is very tight knit community, also very demanding of a lot
Yeah.
of rehearsals and things like that. And I was like, I don't know if I want to give up all of my time like that, but I'm really interested in the way that it all gets put together. And like editing too. Editing is very similar, like at least the kind of way we tell a story within
Right.
editing
Yeah.
is very similar to editing within music.
That
You
makes
have your
sense.
clips and your scenes, and you have automation, and
Yeah.
you need one thing to carry into the other. So it's like I think my kind of idea when I was in school was like, the more kind of things I know and learn that I don't already know will just inform me more as a person, and
Yeah.
make me more well equipped to do anything, whether it's acting, music, film. I just have more experience with life and these tools to be able to communicate those ideas.
I love that. I love that. It's so funny you mentioned like musical theater. That's something that I was involved in too when I was
Oh,
in.
no way.
And you're like one of maybe three other people that I know of that I've spoken to in dance music
Yeah,
that
yeah.
also have that background. So I feel like it's rare in our community, but I always like immediately, like if someone says that, I'm like, oh, that's awesome because somebody else gets me.
That's amazing. That's
I love
great.
it.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time, but the last question I always like to ask is what excites you about the future of dance music?
Who? That's a good question. I mean, I think what we're seeing right now is like a lot of like cross pollination. I don't
Mm,
know if that's the right word,
no,
but
that's
like
right.
you're seeing a lot of different artists that like you see a lot of bass artists right now that are going into doing house stuff, and then you have like someone like Skream who's been doing house, going back to his dubstep stuff, and like
Yeah.
those fans are sticking with him. And I think that there's like just this openness a lot more. Or I mean, I think there is. There's definitely obviously things that are very clicky, and people are kind of, I like this, I don't like that, I'm so much cooler to this, that sort of thing. But
Right.
I think we're moving away from that, and you know, I think that like dance music is becoming popular music of our generation.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of like I work with, please no one who watches take offense, but I work with some older people in the scene,
Yeah.
and they talk about like when you actually made money and dance music and stuff like that. And I think like there's going to be more opportunities with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
More producers that are working with much bigger artists and more like major label artists. Like I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mike Q.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
do. Yeah. He's a friend of
he
mine.
just, oh no way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Mike's an amazing guy, but he just is enlisted to do some production on Kanye's album. And like
Really?
even, oh yeah, he's been tweeting about it.
I love
Because
that.
he couldn't talk about it obviously, but now that it's out, he's been talking about it. And then even before that, some of Kanye's producers were, God, one of the guys I'm not gonna remember, but Jerome LOL. Do you remember the LOL boys?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Really?
So
I was
Jerome LOL, when he left LOL boys, he teamed. I can't remember. Body High, I think was their group name.
Yeah, I remember
It,
that
it,
name.
yeah, it was like a bald dude, and then Jerome LOL. and they were making like really forward thinking dance music and stuff that was like very like Chicago, like classic house, you know. And
Right.
Kanye's from Chicago and liked
Yeah,
that
no,
sort of shit.
he's super into that stuff.
Right. Like, you know, he was playing Kashmir at Coachella 2 years ago, you know.
Right.
It's like, you know, I think that I think we're seeing a lot more of that stuff, you know, pop music producers like, you know, someone like Sophie Tucker is working with John Summit.
Right.
And like, you know, I think that is the direction. I think that popular music is becoming, like dance music is becoming popular music. And I hope that it keeps expanding like that. I hope it definitely includes a little bit more diversity and like world inclusion and that sort of stuff. I hope it doesn't, you know, become sort of whitewashed and taken over by the major labels. But I like where those trends are going right now.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with that. I mean, it's kind of a beautiful thing. It's been maybe 35 years of dance music history, and somehow the rest of the world caught on to this thing long before the United States did. But maybe all that time that it took, it's kind of been worth the wait, because it's nice to see some of our peers like getting recognition in Billboard charts, and you know, not just the dance Billboard charts, but on like the main hot singles charts, you know, the top 100, we're seeing dance music artists break into that top 100 again. And it's pretty amazing to see, like, you know, even underground dance music really having its time in the sun in the mainstream. And I feel like people in the United States, like when I first started going to parties in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I kept saying, I was like, it's going to be the biggest thing in the world one day. And I can't wait for that. And I think everybody in dance music was kind of like, everybody else needs to appreciate this as much as we do. It doesn't always have to be underground. I mean, what does that even mean anymore? Nothing's underground because it's all streaming.
We like to think so. It's so funny. It's like, you know, people are like, I'm so underground. And then it's like, you have the #1 record on Beatport, dude. Like, you are not underground.
If you are the #1 record on Beatport, that means you've sold thousands of copies of that song. If I mean, like, I see people, underground techno artists, and you look at their Spotify, and like their top streaming song has like 500 million streams. And I'm like, hey, dude, that's 500 million streams on one song. You're not underground.
Right. Well, it's like, I work with Nicole Madaber too. You know, I was tour managing her for a while. And like, is she underground? She's one of the, you know, like, makes like huge dark techno, but she's one of the biggest artists in the world, you know? I mean, in that sense, but it's like,
I think we're beyond it. I mean, we say underground because we think of dance music as like this really small, close-knit community, which it is. Like,
it is, yeah.
The industry part of it is really a small group of people. Like, you're always no more than like 2 or 3 steps away from anybody in the scene. But like, in the whole world, there's millions of people that are into this. Like, hundreds of millions of people in the world are into this thing that we're doing. So we like to keep that whole idea like, oh yeah, we're still the underground group because we're the less popular of all the popular things. But you know, it's okay for us to be us to be mainstream now. I invite it.
I agree. I agree. We all need to pay our bills.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if you're getting paid to do this, you're lucky. So yeah. So it's okay to say we're mainstream now.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me today. I really, really appreciate this. You told some truly amazing stories that I never even thought of, like made some connections I never would have even made. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for thinking of me. I'm so glad you reached out. And like I said, I was really excited and this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll definitely be in touch and let you know what's going on with everything. And tell Megan I said what's up.
I will.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, man. Bye.